Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Greg from Blue 13 Sounds, and I want to put together another video on how we can adjust the feel of these loops. We can kind of add a human feel to it, or we can even swing it, or do a combination of the two. And that's a good way to kind of not just use the straight feels or the whatever the recorded feel was. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, I've already got a few tracks in here with a click and a talkback channel. And we're going to start off with eighth notes and show us how we can change the feel of an eighth note groove anyways. So let's go ahead and just take a listen to what I've got in here. It's just an eighth note 2 and 4. Let's take a listen. Okay. We already had it conform to the session's tempo. This was recorded at 100 beats per minute. The session's tempo is actually 94, so it's already been conformed to that tempo, which is what we're looking to do, starting off anyways. And now let's go ahead and change up the feel a little bit. In order to do that, we're going to have to pull up the quantizing menu within Pro Tools. And that's this gear icon right here, or you can hit Alt-0 to pull it up. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk through a few of these menu options as well so we can understand what we're doing here. First off, we have Elastic Audio Events, this gray box right here. There's actually another thing called Audio Clips. We're not going to use Audio Clips, though. Elastic Audio Events will be for actually adjusting the timing of wherever the event markers are on the selected clip. If you do the audio clips, it would actually just move the beginning of the clip to the nearest grid value. So that's usually used for like if you had a bunch of slices done on some, you're doing a bunch of editing, you could quantize it that way. But for this example, we'll be doing elastic audio events, and we can just leave it there. The next box that we need to look at is this quantize to grid. So let's pull it up and see what it looks like. So we have follow bars beats grid. Basically, whatever you have the grid value set to inside of Pro Tools, it'll move it to whatever value that is. Now, I usually don't ever use that. My thought process is I want to quantize this to whatever the groove is. This is an eighth note pattern, so I actually want to be on the eighth note value here so I can adjust that left or right, swing it more, or randomize it. Now, there are also other subdivisions. It really just depends on what you're trying to do. And then down here, we have these templates, Cubase style grooves, Logic, Feel, Injector, MPC. They're just basically presets. All right, so for this, we're going to do eighth note. And then the next thing we're going to look at is this swing right here. So if we have it unchecked, nothing happens. We have to have these boxes checked in order to make an adjustment or to quantize it. So swing, and we have these sliders here to the left. We can change this to any value that we're looking for. So just to show you this, let's go to 100. And let's go ahead and apply that. Okay, you can see how all the waveforms moved a little bit. So I'm going to undo that. Back to that. That's our straight feel. And now let's redo that. Okay, so let's take a listen to what that sounds like. Okay, so that actually gave us a shuffle, which makes sense. A triplet eighth note is actually what a shuffle is. And when you swing the eighth note, that's what you're actually doing. So at 100%, that's a shuffle. So we could easily dial this back to, let's, 55. Apply that. Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, so that's another example of how we can swing it. And this is really going to be a taste thing or what's best for the song that you're working on. But that is one way we can do that. Let's talk about the next box, strength here. So this is basically like a fine adjustment control or slider. So if we did 0 here, okay, and we hit apply, nothing changed. If we look at the waveform again, hit apply, nothing changed, okay? So let's say we have swing at 100 here. Okay, so we can see that it moved everything a lot. And if we go to strength, Let's set this down to like 10%. Okay. Or 9%. It barely moved anything. So strength is just like a fine tuning, fine adjustment control. All right. Let's go down to, we'll skip offset. We don't need to worry about that. Let's go down to randomizing. Okay, so this is how we can kind of add a human feel to what we're doing. So let's take off swing for a second. And let's go a little bit more intense here. 26 sounds good. Apply that. And you can see how everything moved a little bit. And it moved both directions, left and right. So let's zoom in here for a second. So we have this guy. That is no longer on the grid. Some of these are ahead too. This one's ahead right here. So that's how we can kind of recreate a human feel. So let's listen to that. 26 might be too much, but let's take a listen. Okay, so it's a little bit shakier, you know? So I probably wouldn't do that much. If I was trying to make this feel a little bit more human, I'd probably just do like somewhere around, I don't know, 5 to like 15 or 5 to 12, something like that. It really depends on the song, but that's a way you can at least add a little bit of that human feel. So it's 7%, it kind of sounds like this. So it still feels really good to me, and it's got a little bit more variation in it. All right. You can also combine this randomize with how much you swing it too. So if we pulled this back down, maybe right around there with a little bit of that randomizing, let's see what that sounds like. Okay, cool. Now, one thing you may have noticed just now is that it wasn't as smooth when it restarted the loop. A way we can fix this is actually by duplicating this, consolidating these two loops. So it's the same loop twice, but now we created a new file. So now when we listen to bar 5, that would be when the loop restarted again. Let's go ahead and apply our elastic audio first. When we hear bar 5, this time it should be a lot smoother of a transition. And that was bar 5 right there. So that to me sounded a lot smoother. So that's a way we can kind of work around that if there's a rough edit after you do, swing it or randomizing, however much you're going to do it. Just make as much as you need for your track, make a new file, and then apply that quantizing. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to a different groove, different pattern, because that's eighth note stuff, and the 16th note groove is actually pretty popular as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'll actually make that inactive, and let's pull up this one, make it active. Okay, so this is 16th, 2 and 4. Let's just listen to what that sounds like. Cool. Nice and straight, nice and even. All right. So we're going to go back to our quantized grid value here. Instead of eighth notes, we're actually going to 16th notes because that's what this is. This is a 16th note pattern, and we want to affect the 16th note value. So let's go ahead and, let's just leave this 73.7. Let's just apply that. Okay. Everything's shifted. You can see how it's shifted. See how it's a little bit off the 16th note grid value. So that's how you can tell that, like, oh, it got shifted. Before, it was basically right on it. All right, let's go ahead and redo that. There it is. And let's listen. And that's how you can kind of get that 16th note swing feel. Let's go ahead and do another example. Make this one inactive. Pull up this one. Make it inactive. Okay, so this is a shuffle feel. Okay. Let's listen to what this sounds like. All right. So it's a shuffle. But how can we swing and change this effect as well? Well, we can switch this back to eighth note. Again, we talked about that with the eighth note triplet being the shuffle feel. If we have this slider here, we can actually, if we go to the left, we can actually decrease the amount of swing. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to like, I don't know, 60% here. And let's zoom in for a second before I even hit apply. See how everything's shifted to the left a little bit? So that would actually decrease the amount of shuffle that we have going on. So let's listen to that. All right. So that did what we want to do, except for one spot. And that's actually important. I wanted to show how we can kind of fix that. Let's go ahead and look at the warp view here. And we can see that everything's been moved over, right? This is how Pro Tools does it. But we have this one transient right here. This one's not in the right spot because it actually created an event marker right here, or use this event marker to move it. So if we undo our quantizing, you can see that that's what happened. It grabbed this one instead of this one right here. So in order to prevent that from happening, we can just go to an analysis view and we can actually delete that marker and that'll go away. Okay. So there's another way that we can do this a little bit better actually. If we go up to our clip menu here, elastic properties, and we select our clip, go back to warp view so we can select our clip, we can actually decrease this event sensitivity. And that will actually get rid of the extra markers that we have going on. So that way we don't have to manually delete as many markers. Okay, so now if we hit apply for our quantizing, let's go ahead and close that down. Let's zoom in for a second and let's listen. That fixed our problem. So that's actually another important thing to note is that if you have any weird quantizing rhythms or that are created whenever you're doing this, is go ahead and look at your warp view on your track and see if any markers are out of place. You can always just manually adjust these like this to move them wherever you want, or delete extra markers. If you want to delete the markers, go to your analysis view and you can actually delete them that way, things like that. So that is how we can adjust our loops and kind of change the feel and make them feel appropriate for whatever song we're working on. Again, I'm Greg from Blue 13 Sounds. I hope that helps. Thanks, guys.